The shrill ring of the phone shattered the quiet of Simon's home, echoing through the dimly lit hallway. He stumbled out of bed, his heart racing as he fumbled for the receiver. The voice on the other end belonged to a somber-sounding nurse from St. Mark's Hospital. "Is this Mr. Simon Anderson? We regret to inform you that your wife, Grace Anderson, has been involved in a serious incident. You're needed at the hospital immediately." Dread clung to Simon like a suffocating fog as he hastily dressed and made his way to the hospital. The tires of his car screeched against the pavement, a discordant melody to the chaos unfurling in his mind. Upon arriving at St. Mark's, the sterile smell of antiseptic assaulted his senses. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as a nurse guided him through the labyrinth of corridors to a small waiting room. Anxiety gnawed at him as minutes stretched into an agonizing eternity. Finally, a tired-looking doctor entered the room, her gaze heavy with sympathy. "Mr. Anderson, I'm Dr. Reynolds. Your wife has been admitted with severe injuries. We're doing everything we can, but it's a critical situation. Can you tell us if she has any pre-existing medical conditions or allergies?" Simon's voice trembled as he spoke. "No, she's generally healthy." "What happened?" The doctor hesitated before responding, choosing her words carefully. "There was an incident at your home. The police are involved, and they'll be here to speak with you shortly. Right now, our priority is Grace's well-being." As the doctor left, Simon's mind raced with worry and confusion. Moments later, two police officers entered the room, their stern expressions intensifying the gravity of the situation. One officer, Detective Harris, spoke with a measured tone. "Mr. Anderson, we understand this is a difficult time for you. We need to ask you some questions about your whereabouts tonight and your relationship with your wife. It's crucial for our investigation." Simon, still in shock, managed to stammer out, "I was at home. We were both at home. What happened to Grace?" Detective Rodriguez, the other officer, exchanged a glance with his partner before responding. "We're trying to piece that together, sir. It appears to be a serious incident, and we'll need your cooperation to understand the full picture." The weight of uncertainty pressed down on Simon as the dialogue unfolded, each word deepening the mystery of the night's events. The hospital's sterile walls seemed to close in around him, and the truth remained elusive in the darkened corridors of St. Mark's. The sterile hospital room offered little comfort as Simon, still grappling with shock, faced the scrutiny of Detective Harris and Detective Rodriguez. The harsh overhead lights accentuated the weariness etched into the detectives' faces. Detective Harris, a middle-aged man with a no-nonsense demeanor, began the questioning. "Mr. Anderson, we appreciate your cooperation. Now, can you walk us through your activities leading up to the incident?" Simon, sitting on the edge of an uncomfortable hospital chair, ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "We were at home. Grace and I, nothing unusual, just a regular evening." Detective Rodriguez, younger and more empathetic, interjected, "Regular evening, you say? Any arguments, unusual visitors, or strange occurrences?" Simon hesitated, recalling the mundane details of the night. "No arguments, no visitors, just a quiet night at home. We were watching TV." Detective Harris leaned forward, narrowing his gaze. "And you're sure about that? Nothing out of the ordinary?" Simon's frustration bubbled beneath the surface. "Yes, I'm sure. What's this about anyway? What happened to Grace?" Detective Rodriguez sighed, exchanging a glance with his partner. "Mr. Anderson, we found your wife injured at your residence. It's a serious situation, and we're exploring all possibilities. Are you aware of any threats or disputes involving your wife recently?" Simon's mind raced, searching for any inkling of trouble. "No, nothing like that. Grace doesn't have enemies. We keep to ourselves." Detective Harris leaned back, studying Simon intently. "You understand, Mr. Anderson, that we have a duty to investigate thoroughly. We'll need to verify your alibi and speak with any potential witnesses." Simon, frustration turning to anxiety, nodded. "Fine, whatever it takes. Just tell me what happened to Grace." As the detectives left the room, Simon was left alone with a barrage of unanswered questions. The hospital hallway echoed with the distant sounds of medical equipment, amplifying the uncertainty that loomed over him. In the hallway, the detectives conferred in hushed tones. Detective Rodriguez turned to his partner. Harris, something doesn't add up. We need to dig deeper into this guy's background and the events leading up to tonight. There's more to this than meets the eye. Detective Harris nodded in agreement. I agree, Rodriguez. We can't afford to overlook any details. Let's get a warrant for the house and see what we find. As the detectives prepared to delve into the heart of the mystery, Simon remained in the Stark hospital room, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him like a relentless force. The hospital room seemed to constrict around Simon as he anxiously waited for any news about Grace. His mind, a turbulent sea of emotions, wrestled with the need for answers. Unable to sit still, he paced the room, his thoughts a chaotic whirlwind. Outside the hospital, the rain had started to fall, mirroring Simon's internal turmoil. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the inevitable confrontation with the events leading up to that fateful night. Unable to stay idle, Simon decided to retrace the steps of the days preceding the incident. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through recent messages and calls, searching for any subtle clues or changes in Grace's behavior. As he examined their interactions, Simon realized he had missed certain nuances, subtle shifts in Grace's tone, cryptic messages he had dismissed. His desperation deepened as he replayed their recent conversations in his mind. In an attempt to gain clarity, Simon reached out to Grace's close friends, hoping they might shed light on her state of mind. One by one, he dialed their numbers, each conversation a delicate dance between probing for information and maintaining composure. The first call was to Emily, Grace's childhood friend. Hey, Emily, it's Simon. I know this is sudden, but have you noticed anything off about Grace recently? Anything she might not have shared with me? Emily hesitated before responding, Simon, she's been a bit distant lately, but I thought it was just stress. She didn't mention anything specific. Is everything okay? Simon, a knot forming in his stomach, muttered, I'm not sure. Something happened, and I'm trying to piece it together. Thanks, Emily. As Simon delved deeper into the web of Grace's social connections, each conversation unveiled a fragment of the puzzle. He spoke to colleagues, neighbors, and even distant relatives, piecing together a mosaic of Grace's life that he had overlooked. In a particularly revealing conversation with Grace's co-worker, Sarah, Simon heard a mention of Grace's recent decision to quit her job. Intrigued, he probed, why did she quit? Was there any particular reason? Sarah's response was cautious. She said something about taking a break before starting a family. It struck me as odd, but I didn't press. Is everything all right, Simon? Simon, grappling with the realization that Grace had kept this significant decision from him, muttered a strained, I'm not sure. Thanks for letting me know, Sarah. The more Simon delved into Grace's recent history, the more he questioned the foundations of their relationship. The hospital room, now dimly lit by a single overhead lamp, became a contemplative space for Simon to confront the gaps in his understanding. In a moment of solitude, he whispered to himself, what else have I missed? What was happening in her life that I didn't see? As the rain continued its rhythmic dance on the hospital window, Simon braced himself for the harsh truths that lay ahead. The rain-soaked streets reflected the turmoil within Simon as he left the hospital. He knew he needed answers, and the only place he might find them was at home. The journey back to their shared residence was a surreal blend of apprehension and determination. As Simon pulled into the driveway, the once familiar sight of his home seemed alien, cast in an eerie glow by the dim streetlights and the shimmering raindrops. A foreboding sense of the unknown hung in the air. With each step towards the front door, Simon's heart thudded louder, mirroring the rhythmic drumming of the rain. He inserted the key, the metallic click echoing through the quiet neighborhood. The door creaked open, revealing the shadowed interior. The living room, once a haven of shared laughter and quiet evenings, now harbored an unsettling stillness. Simon's gaze swept across the room, searching for any clues or abnormalities that might illuminate the mystery surrounding Grace. He ascended the staircase, the wooden steps bearing the weight of anticipation. The hallway stretched before him like an uncertain path, leading to the bedroom where secrets awaited. Upon reaching the bedroom door, Simon hesitated. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay beyond. As the door swung open, the room unfolded before him, a tableau frozen in time. There on the bed lay Grace in the arms of another man. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Simon grappled with the searing image before him. The realization struck like a physical blow, a visceral ache that radiated from his chest. Simon, his voice strained, uttered a single word, "Grace?" Startled, the figures on the bed jolted. Grace's eyes widened in shock, and the man beside her recoiled, an awkward silence settling over the room. "Simon," Grace stammered, attempting to gather herself. I can explain." The man, a stranger to Simon, averted his gaze, his attempt at an apology lost in the charged atmosphere. Simon, his emotions a tempest, struggled to find words. "What's there to explain, Grace?" Simon's voice was a mixture of anger and hurt. "I come home to find you with another man? Is this what our marriage has come to?" Grace, now sitting up, reached out, desperation in her eyes. "Simon, please let me explain." "It's not what you think." Simon, his emotions in turmoil, turned away. "Explain? Explain how you betrayed us, Grace. I don't know if I want to hear it." The room, once a sanctuary, became a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Simon, grappling with the shock of betrayal, exited the room, leaving Grace and the stranger to confront the aftermath of a revelation that would forever alter their lives. As the rain continued its relentless dance outside, a marriage unraveled within the confines of a broken home. The echo of slamming doors reverberated through the house as Simon stumbled down the staircase, his mind racing with a tumult of emotions. The living room, once a haven of shared memories, felt suffocating, the air thick with the weight of betrayal. Grace, her face etched with guilt, followed Simon into the room, attempting to bridge the chasm that had suddenly opened between them. "Simon, please," Grace implored, her voice strained. "It's not what you think. There's so much you don't understand." Simon, anger simmering beneath his hurt, turned to face her. "Not what I think? Grace, I saw you with another man in our bed. What more is there to understand?" Grace, her eyes pleading, struggled to find the right words. "Simon, I made a mistake. It's complicated. He's just a distraction. It meant nothing." Simon's frustration erupted. "A distraction? Is that what you call it? Our marriage meant nothing to you. Is that what you're saying?" As the words hung in the air, the stranger from the bedroom cautiously descended the stairs, an uneasy tension enveloping the room. "Look, man," the stranger began, avoiding eye contact, "I had no idea she was married. This wasn't supposed to happen." Simon's glare intensified. "Save your apologies. You both knew what you were doing. I trusted her, and she betrayed that trust." Grace, desperation etched on her face, reached out to Simon. "Simon, please, let's talk. I never wanted to hurt you." Simon recoiled from her touch. "Talk? What's left to say? You've shattered everything we had." The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the sound of raindrops tapping against the window panes. In that moment, the shattered fragments of a marriage lay scattered, irreparable. Simon, his voice strained, spoke words that echoed the depth of his pain. "I don't know if I can forgive this, Grace. I need time." Grace, tears streaming down her face, watched helplessly as Simon gathered his things and headed for the door. As Simon stepped into the rain-soaked night, he cast one final glance at the woman he had once believed to be his life partner. The betrayal hung in the air, leaving behind a broken home, shattered vows, and the palpable ache of heartbreak. The rain had intensified by the time Simon reached his car, mirroring the storm within him. As he drove through the slick streets, his thoughts drifted to a dark corner of his past, an ominous chapter that seemed incongruent with the person he had become. The night air was heavy with the scent of rain as Simon pulled into the driveway of an inconspicuous storage unit. He fumbled for the keys, unlocking memories that had long been dormant. The unit creaked open, revealing a trove of items from Simon's military past. Amidst the camouflage gear and faded photographs, Simon uncovered a small, unassuming device, an artifact from a time when his skills were honed for a different kind of battle. He held it in his hands, the weight of its potential sending shivers down his spine. In a sudden surge of determination, Simon decided that if emotional wounds were to be inflicted, then perhaps this military relic could become an instrument of reckoning. The rain cascaded down, a fitting backdrop to the storm brewing within him. Simon, gripping the device tightly, muttered to himself, "Maybe it's time to bring a taste of war to the battlefield of my marriage." As he navigated back to the house, his mind wrestled with the gravity of his decision. The raindrops, now relentless, pounded against the car roof like a haunting drumbeat. Upon his return, the house felt different, as though it held the secrets of a marriage unraveling. Simon ascended the stairs, his steps deliberate, each one a footfall in the theater of his own emotional warfare. Outside the bedroom door, Simon paused. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation that awaited. The device, once a relic of a distant past, now represented a desperate attempt to regain control over a life spinning out of grasp. As the door swung open, the room lay before him, frozen in a moment suspended in time. Grace and the stranger, unaware of the impending intrusion, were caught in the aftermath of their betrayal. Simon, his voice cutting through the charged silence, spoke with a cold resolve, "Enough lies. It's time for you both to face the consequences." The device, clutched tightly in Simon's hand, became the harbinger of an unforeseen reckoning. The rain outside mirrored the tempest within as Simon took a step into the room, ready to unveil the consequences of his military past on the battleground of his shattered marriage. The room seemed to constrict around Simon as he stood, holding the military device, the weight of his decision heavy on his shoulders. The rain outside continued its relentless assault on the window panes, a symphony of chaos mirroring the tempest within. Grace and the stranger, their intimate moment disrupted, turned to face Simon with a mixture of surprise and fear. The air in the room crackled with tension as the gravity of the situation settled over them. "What the hell is that?" the stranger stammered, eyeing the device in Simon's hand. Simon's voice, cold and resolute, cut through the charged atmosphere. "It's a souvenir from my military days, a stun grenade, designed for situations just like this." Grace, her eyes widening with a mix of realization and apprehension, spoke with a tremor in her voice. "Simon, you can't be serious. Put that thing down." Simon, the device still clutched in his hand, responded with a bitter edge to his words. "Serious? Grace, our marriage is unraveling before my eyes because of your actions. I'd say it's pretty serious." The stranger, sensing the escalating tension, attempted to defuse the situation. "Hey, man, let's talk about this. We don't need any violence here." Simon, his gaze unwavering, retorted, "Violence? You invaded my home, my marriage. You both shattered the trust I had in her. This is me taking control." With a swift motion, Simon pulled the pin on the stun grenade and tossed it into the room. The device emitted a blinding flash of light and a deafening noise, disorienting Grace and the stranger. As the echoes of the stun grenade's blast faded, the room fell into a stunned silence. Simon, his heart pounding, surveyed the aftermath of his drastic measure, a desperate attempt to reclaim a sense of power in the face of betrayal. Grace, recovering from the disorientation, spoke with a mix of anger and fear. "Simon, what have you done? This is insane." Simon, his expression unyielding, replied, "Insane? Maybe. But it's nothing compared to what you've done to us." The room, once a sanctuary, now bore witness to the collateral damage of a marriage on the brink. The rain outside continued its relentless drumming, as if nature itself mourned the shattering of a once unbreakable bond. As Simon left the room, leaving behind a disoriented and bewildered Grace and the stranger, he was propelled into a new reality, one where drastic measures became the currency of a broken marriage, and the consequences of his actions reverberated in the stormy echoes of the night. The aftermath of the stun grenade left the room cloaked in an eerie silence. The disoriented figures of Grace and the stranger struggled to regain their composure as Simon, fueled by a volatile mix of anger and despair, faced the consequences of his drastic measure. Grace, her voice trembling, spoke first. "Simon, what the hell is wrong with you? You can't just." Simon, cutting her off with a bitter edge to his words, retorted, "Can't just what, Grace? You brought a stranger into our home, into our bed, and you expect me to calmly accept it." The stranger, now recovering from the disorientation, interjected, "Look, man, I get that you're upset, but this is way over the top. You can't just throw grenades in your own house." Simon's gaze, cold and unyielding, fixed on the stranger. "Over the top? You don't get to lecture me about what's over the top after what you've done." The room, still echoing with the aftermath of the stun grenade, became a battleground of words. The rain outside continued its relentless dance, a fitting backdrop to the storm within the fractured home. Grace, frustration replacing her initial shock, exclaimed, "This is insane, Simon. You've lost it." Simon, his emotions a tempest, replied, "Lost it? Maybe I have. But what about you? What about us?" The stranger, sensing the escalating tension, attempted to reason, "Look, man, we never meant for this to happen. It just got out of hand. Maybe we should all just calm down and talk." Simon, his anger unabated, scoffed, "Talk? You think talking will fix this? You both cross a line that can't be uncrossed." As the words hung in the air, the room became a surreal tableau of fractured trust and shattered vows. Simon, his gaze flickering between Grace and the stranger, wrestled with the consequences of his actions. The stranger, sensing the futility of further dialogue, muttered, "This is messed up. I'm out of here." As he made a hasty exit, Grace, her eyes brimming with a mix of anger and hurt, glared at Simon. "What have you become, Simon? Is this the man I married?" Simon, his resolve unbroken, replied with a bitter irony, "Maybe not. Maybe this is the man your actions created." The room, once a sanctuary, now bore witness to the irreversible damage of a marriage unraveling. The consequences of the night's events, like ripples in a pond, expanded into an uncertain future, leaving behind a fractured home and hearts burdened with the weight of betrayal. The fallout from the night's events extended beyond the confines of Simon and Grace's home. News of the tumultuous evening spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of Simon's parents, who had long been the bedrock of his support system. A few days after the confrontation, Simon found himself facing the weight of familial judgment. His parents, their faces etched with a mix of disappointment and disbelief, sat across from him in their dimly lit living room. His mother, her voice carrying the weight of years spent nurturing a once strong family, spoke first. "Simon, we never thought we'd see the day when our own son would resort to such drastic measures." Simon, his gaze fixed on the floor, replied with a sense of resignation, "I never thought so either, Mom. But everything's changed." His father, a stern figure with lines etched by years of wisdom, spoke with measured restraint. "We understand you're hurting, son, but using a military device in your own home, that's not the way to handle things." Simon, his frustration bubbling to the surface, retorted, "Handle things? What was I supposed to do, Dad? Sit back and accept their betrayal? I couldn't just stand there and—" His mother interrupted, her tone a blend of empathy and reproach. "There are better ways to deal with pain, Simon. You've jeopardized not just your marriage, but your entire future." Simon, his eyes revealing the depth of his internal struggle, responded, "Maybe it's time for a fresh start. Maybe everything needed to fall apart for something new to emerge." His father, a voice of reason in the tumult, sighed, "Son, we've always been there for you. But now you've jeopardized the very foundation of our family." As the weight of his parents' disappointment settled over him, Simon felt the gravity of the fallout from his actions. The rain outside, a constant companion to his turmoil, continued its rhythmic dance on the window panes. His mother, a touch of sadness in her eyes, spoke softly, "We need time, Simon. Time to process all of this. Right now, it's best if you give us some space." Simon, grappling with the realization that his actions had not only fractured his marriage but strained the bonds of his family, nodded solemnly. As he left his parents' home, he felt the weight of their collective disappointment lingering in the air. The fallout extended beyond the confines of his immediate relationships, casting a shadow over the broader tapestry of his life. Simon, standing in the rain-soaked night, faced the uncertainty of a future marred by the consequences of his own choices. In the days that followed the tumultuous events, Simon received a letter. Its contents bore the weight of Grace's remorse and understanding, a fragile attempt to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. Simon, alone in the dimly lit confines of his temporary residence, opened the envelope with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The rain outside, a constant companion to his emotional turmoil, seemed to echo the melancholy within. The letter unfolded a narrative of regret and reflection. Grace's words, written with a penance that only time and consequence could bring, attempted to convey the depth of her understanding. Simon, I struggle to find the right words to express the remorse that weighs on my heart. What happened between us, between me and that stranger, was a moment of weakness, a betrayal that I can't justify. I see now the pain I've caused you, the fractures I've created. I know that actions speak louder than words, and my actions have irreparably damaged the foundation of our marriage. The fallout from that night has extended far beyond our home, touching the lives of those who once considered us a family. I won't make excuses. I won't ask for forgiveness because I know I may not deserve it. What we had was beautiful, and I allowed my own insecurities and desires to tarnish it. The consequences of that night are a burden we both must bear. I understand the gravity of my actions, and I am prepared to face whatever repercussions come my way. You don't have to forgive me, Simon, but I want you to know that I am truly sorry. I wish you peace and healing in the aftermath of our shared tragedy. Grace. As Simon finished reading, the weight of Grace's words settled over him like a heavy shroud. The rain outside, a symphony of remorse, seemed to echo the sentiment of the letter. A knock on the door interrupted his contemplation. Simon, still holding the letter, opened the door to find a courier with a small package. "Special delivery for Mr. Simon," the courier said, handing over the package. Simon, a sense of curiosity replacing the heaviness within, unwrapped the parcel to find a set of pajamas. A note attached read, "From Sarah Barton, with gratitude." The unexpected gesture, a fragile olive branch from a person entangled in the web of his own shattered marriage, left Simon grappling with the complexity of human connection in the aftermath of betrayal. As the rain continued its melancholic dance outside, Simon, holding both the letter of remorse and the unexpected gift, faced the uncertain path ahead, a path marked by the consequences of his own actions and the fragile threads of redemption woven into the fabric of his fractured life.